going on right here in Baton Rouge this weekend. And we had Dr. Taylor on. He said, I made the WBRZ news. Hey, I was on one Thursday for the women's game. I want to know where you guys were. I'm not going to get started on you because y'all know I'll get on you. We're talking about the biggest game in the SWAC thus far this season. In Baton Rouge, where was y'all at? Shout out to my man Craig. Craig was there. He said I had to shout him out because look, Craig, I apologize. I didn't get it. It went over my head the week before when Craig and I was sitting there cheering against Jackson State and Southern got that victory in overtime. Look, hey, we was giving the refs hell as Coach Kevin Johnson gave us the duty. He said, this is your duty. Give them hell, but don't get a text. So I made sure Craig and I was checking with the refs. Hey, how far can we go with it? The ref said we was good. But Thursday night, Southern University women took on Texas Southern. Did you know Texas Southern women came into that game 10-0 in conference play? No reason that game should not have been packed. Now, I may talk about the women's side a lot because sometimes you have those games that may not be so competitive. But this was one. And I made sure I was front and center for it. I was enjoying every minute of it, cheering on Southern University and that women's basketball team with Coach Carlos Funches and company. And guess what they did? They upended the Texas Southern Tigers, broke their 10-game winning streak, and gave them their first conference loss on the season. But before that, hit the brakes. Let's go back to last week. Southern University took on Alabama A&M on the road. Guess what? Dawn Thornton taking over Alabama A&M, coming over from the University of Arkansas at Pine Bluff. Coach Funches and Coach Dawn Thornton met a couple years ago in the SWAC championship, in the tournament championship when she was at UAPB. She led UAPB to their first ever tournament championship appearance. Coach Funches said, you know what? This ain't my first rodeo, sister. I do this. And Southern got the victory in their NCAA tournament appearance. This time they meet again. Southern gets the victory, 50-44 over a pretty good Alabama A&M women's basketball team. In this game, Southern women shot 19 of 50 for 38%, 2 of 16 from the three-point line, shooting 12%, and 10 of 13 from the free throw line, shooting 76%. The Jaguars got the victory over Alabama A&M, and then it set up a big matchup, as I told you, Thursday night against Texas Southern. And when you see them, you can understand why they were 10-0 heading into this game. Tough, physical, and they will get into your heads, but it's tough on the bluff. Rough on the bluff, tough on the bluff, whatever the case is. It's hard to walk out of there with a W on the bluff if you're the opposing team. And shout out to the Southern University women's basketball team getting it done and holding it down against a formidable opponent in Texas Southern, who the Jags, might I add, to go back to start the season, were up in the fourth quarter and kind of let the lead squander away. I can talk about the what-ifs, the woulda, coulda, shouldas. Southern ultimately lost that game, but it showed the first time these two teams played how competitive it is between Texas Southern and Southern. If you go back and look at the first game on the road, in Houston. This time, Southern gets the victory on Thursday night, 63-53. Southern University women's basketball shoots 22 of 69 for 31%. They were 6 of 22 from the three-point line, which kind of had me a little iffy, seeing the amount of threes jacked up for 27%. But once again, free throws. Hey, Texas Southern on the other end, those free throws almost came through for them. But for Southern, 13 of 20 for shooting for 65%. Texas Southern out-rebounded Southern, 40 rebounds to 35 rebounds. Of those 40 rebounds for Texas Southern, 33 on the defensive side, 7 offensively for Southern, 35 rebounds, 21 offensively, 14 offensively, 21 defensively as the Jaguars, Southern University women's team, gets the victory. Let's look at some other games around on Thursday night. Alcorn State defeated Florida A&M 74-69. Alcorn State women going on the road. They are sneaky. Listen, they're not the best team, but you kind of see this team found themselves, I was going to say snuck into, but they found themselves in the conference championship last year during the tournament, taking on Jackson State. They got hot at the right time. One of those opponents who they beat along their way was Southern University women's basketball last year in the tournament. Alcorn came on the road this year, snuck out of the F.G. Clark Activity Center with a victory. They are sneaky. They're like middle of the pack. Like, you can't never sleep on Alcorn's women's basketball team. They're like right there. They got the victory 74-69 over Florida A&M on the road. How about Mississippi Valley? Getting the victory 68-57 over Alabama State. Mississippi Valley women's basketball team with a big win there. Jackson State over Bethune-Cookman. Jackson State women with a 6-point victory, 59-53 over Bethune-Cookman. Alabama A&M coach Don Thornton gets a chance to see her old team, the Golden Lions of UAPB, the University of Arkansas Pine Bluff. My mom's alma mater, right? Alabama A&M women's basketball team gets the victory 69-55. And then Grambling and Prairie View, 75-54, Grambling women's basketball team over Prairie View and Sandy Pugh. Sandy Pugh has been struggling over at Prairie View. Look up matchups today around the SWAC. Texas Southern on the road taking on Grambling. Texas Southern's going to want to bounce back from that loss here in Baton Rouge on Thursday. So they're going to be, as they say, licking their chops to try to bounce back against Grambling today, which should be a really good ball game between those two ball clubs. Alcorn State and Bethune-Cookman. Alcorn headed over to Daytona to take on Bethune-Cookman on the women's side. Tip off at 2 o'clock as well as 2 o'clock for Texas Southern and Grambling. Southern and Prairie View today. Sandy Pugh, former head Southern women's basketball coach, will be leading her team back in. The Prairie View Panthers taking on Southern University today. Tip off at 2:30. For those of you in the Baton Rouge capital city area, you want to go watch a really good basketball team, women's basketball team, go check out Southern University women's team. Alabama State on the road today taking on the Golden Lions of UAPB. That tip-off is going to be at 3 o'clock. Jackson State and Florida A&M tip-off at 3 o'clock. The Tigers are on the road at the Rattlers on the women's side. And Alabama A&M and Mississippi Valley tip-off 4 o'clock as Alabama A&M women take on Mississippi Valley women's team. As I said, Southern and Prairie View should be a good one today. Anytime you have a former coach in Sandy Pugh and you're looking at Coach Carlos Funches, his former boss, he's going to have a tough time, but Southern has seemed to get the best of Prairie View over the past couple of years. When you look at these teams, when you look at, it has not quite been a rivalry. It's kind of been one-sided. But all right, ladies and gentlemen, let's look at the SWAC standings on the women's side. And let's start at the bottom and work our way up. Let's see who's at the back of the class to all the way at the front of the class. And at the very bottom, the University of Arkansas Pine Bluff, the Golden Lions women's basketball team thus far in conference play are 1-11. They're 3-19 on the season, so really tough up there for them. I know my man Chris Robertson, who is the athletic director up there, is going to probably be evaluating as they're looking at first-year head coach there. Prairie View, Sandy Pugh tied with two other teams at 3-9 in conference play. Alabama State, Mississippi Valley, along with Prairie View, all 3-9 in conference play right now. They're all 8 games out of that first-place spot, but don't take them lightly today, Jaguar Nation. Right above those three teams, Bethune-Cookman women's basketball team, 7 games out of first place, sitting there with a record in conference play, 4-8. Then right above them, their Florida partner, Florida A&M. FAMU, 5-7 in conference play, 6 games out of first place. And then it's that sneaky Alcorn team I'm telling you about. Middle of the pack, and it shows with their record. They're 6-6 in conference play, 5 games out of first place. Cannot take them lightly as they came in and beat Southern just a couple weeks ago. Then you look at Grambling, 7-5 in conference play, 4 games out of first place. Alabama A&M, who Southern was able to go on the road on the women's side and get the victory on last Saturday, sitting there at 9-3, 2 games out of first place. Then you have 2 teams sitting there in second place, all tied up. That is Jackson State and Southern University. Southern got the victory over Jackson State. Now both those teams are tied in second place at 10-2 in conference play, 1 game out of first place. And then, of course, leading the pack, Southern just defeated on Thursday night. Texas Southern sitting there at 11-1 at the top of the pack. Overall on the season, they're 12-11. Southern with a victory today over Prairie View can now be 500 on the season. With a victory today, they'll be 13-13 on the season. They're 12-13 now. We understand how things happen when you go through that tough, rigorous non-conference schedule. But the Jaguars, for me, if you're going to compete for the conference championship, if you're going to compete not only for the regular season title, but for the conference tournament title, I always want to see whoever's going to represent this conference headed into the NCAA tournament with an above 500 record. It just means more. It means more for the conference, and guess what? Sometimes, depending on the strength of schedule, it keeps you out of that first 16, right? I know some teams around the conference may like that first 16 because It gives you an opportunity to may not necessarily start the tournament off against that number 1 seed, but at least you get in and you get a winnable opponent in which is going to be another 16 seed where you can go in and get that NCAA victory. Grambling did it last year, right? Got their first ever NCAA tournament victory on the men's side. But I'm just using that overall. I always like to see whoever's going to represent this conference. And right now I'm feeling very strong about Southern. Jackson State, Alabama A&M, Southern, and Texas Southern. 4 teams right now that, in my opinion, can get it done. 4 teams that I believe can get it done. And watching Southern's performance against Texas Southern and the fact they've already beaten Alabama A&M and Jackson State, they've beaten every team surrounded them right now. Every team that's surrounding them, they've gotten it done. So big game today with Prairie View. They got to get it done. They'll be 500 on the season. They'll be 11-2 in conference play if can get it done. Sandy Pugh, trust me, is not going to go out without a fight with her and her Prairie View women's basketball team. Tip-off at 2:30. Let's talk some men's basketball across the Southwestern Athletic Conference. Southern University, of course, going to be the main topic of this conversation. They were on the road last week at the Alabamas, as we like to say. On the road against Alabama A&M to start things off on last Saturday. The Jaguars get the victory, 81-68, in a very tough environment up in Alabama A&M with that new arena that they have. 81-68, Jaguars, and that one on the men's side, shoot 26 of 51 for 51%, shooting 11 of 20 from the three-point line for 55%, and 18 of 37 from the free throw line, shooting 48%. Jaguars get the victory. Now, this is where things get a little cloudy and a little muddy, right? That perfect streak came to an end on Monday in Montgomery, Alabama, as Alabama State defeated Southern and handed Southern their first conference loss on the season. 82-81. It couldn't have been even more by 1 point. The Jags did everything they could to battle back late in the second half, but Alabama State just found a way to close it out. 82-81 is that final score. Southern in that game, 26 of 70, shooting for 37%. Tough day from the three-point line, 5 of 22, shooting 22%. And a tough day from the free throw line because those free throws on the back end could have helped Southern as they shot 24 of 33, shooting 72%. They out-rebounded Alabama State, but on the other side, Alabama State shot 29 of 65, shooting 44%. They were 10 of 26 from the three-point line, shooting 38%, knocking down just a couple more. And as well as on the free throw line, 14 of 20, shooting 70%. Southern in this game rebounds, 50 rebounds to Alabama State, 37. Of those 50 for the Jaguars, 22 offensively, 28 defensively. On the other side for the Hornets of Alabama State, 37 rebounds, 10 offensively, 27 defensively. And then let's go back and look at some games around the SWAC on last Saturday as we got things wrapped up. Bethune-Cookman on the road at Prairie View. I told you, Reggie Theus has a really good ball club at Bethune-Cookman on the men's side. You cannot never count them out. That is a really good ball club. I like that basketball team. I really do. I said this last year when they went 3-0 against Southern. Southern got the victory over them this year at home, but they are a tough out. I don't care who you are. But they're one of those teams you never know who's going to show up, though. They've had games where it was like, this can't not be the Bethune-Cookman team that I put hype into. Then there were other games, it was like, this is the Bethune-Cookman team, and this is why I'm putting hype into them. They got a victory by 3 against Prairie View. Jackson State rolled on against in-state opponent Mississippi Valley State, 92-44 on the men's side. How about Alcorn State men getting the victory over UAPB? The Golden Lions fell short, 79-60. Grambling State get the 10-point victory over Alabama State, 77-67. And then Florida A&M with a 2-point victory over Texas Southern. And I'm going to talk about Texas Southern here in a second because they just seem to have fallen off a cliff here the past couple weeks. FAMU gets it 66-64. Not only did FAMU get the victory, they went on the road to Houston at Texas Southern to get the victory. And we know that is a tough place to play, don't matter who the team is. And then on Monday, looking at other scores around the SWAC, Florida A&M kept it rolling again. They went 2-0 over the weekend over the Texas schools, 78-67 as the Rattlers got the victory over the Panthers. Alcorn State, a big victory over in-state opponent Mississippi Valley. They picked up where Jackson State left off, 86-39. Jackson State kept it rolling against the Golden Lions, 94-78 over UAPB. Bethune-Cookman goes into Texas Southern, Once again, I'm going to talk about Texas Southern here in a second. Bethune-Cookman gets a 3-point victory, 80-77 over Texas Southern as Reggie Theus and the Wildcats rolled on, and then Grambling rolls on 72-61 on the road against Alabama A&M. And, of course, I told you, Southern takes their first conference loss, snaps the 10-game winning streak that they've had, 82-81 over a loss to Alabama State. You see, it just kind of took everything out of me because of that one. 10-game winning streak heading into that. Let's look at the SWAC conference standings. Let's start at the bottom and let's work our way up. And one of those teams, as I continue to talk about, is going to be Texas Southern midway through this. But let's start at the bottom. Once again, UAPB is going to have to evaluate, I say this every year, evaluate all of your athletic programs, but in particular men and women's basketball. Both men and women are at the bottom of the barrel in SWAC basketball. How about the men's team? They're 4-20 on the season, 1-10 in conference play. Right above them, Mississippi Valley, who is 1-10 in conference play as well. They're 3-21 on the season. Got to do some evaluation at those programs. I know UAPB had a lot of hopes for Coach Bozeman up there, but you know, I always have my second opinion about what happens there because I got to hear my mom about her alma mater on why they're not doing what Southern's doing. And being at 1-10 ain't what Southern doing. All right, let's move forward. Prairie View and Alabama A&M all sitting there at 3-8, 7 games out of first place. On the men's side. Grambling, how about them, the Tigers? Underachieving this year, 5-6 in conference play. You're talking about a team got a NCAA tournament victory last year. They took on Purdue. They were heavy favorites coming into this year, and now they're 5 games out of first place, sitting there at 5-6 on the season in conference play. Alabama State, one of those middle of the pack teams who got the victory over Southern and snapped Southern's 10-game win streak, sitting there at 6-5 in conference play, 4 games out of first place, and then you're gonna have 3 teams all stacked up. One of those teams I'm going to give you a little bit of information on. Alcorn State, Texas Southern, and FAMU. How about FAMU finding themselves in the thick of things, right? FAMU traditionally in basketball has been you say those, you use those sounds when you talk about Florida A&M basketball. This year, they are 7-4 in conference play, 3 games out of first place. And guess what? 2 games away from being 500 on the season, as their overall record right now is 10-12. They're 6-2 at home over in Tallahassee, playing in front of a crowd of nobody. But then you look at Alcorn State, 7-4, 3 games out of first place. They kind of found their stride since conference play. All 7 victories up for them this year over their overall record have come in conference play. They're 7-17 on the season. And then let's talk about Texas Southern, who was right there with Southern, seemed to be red hot. They're on a 3-game losing streak. That 3-game losing streak includes UAPB, who they gave the Golden Lions their first and only conference victory of the season, and then to go along with Florida A&M and Bethune-Cookman. Texas Southern's kind of hit a slump. They're 7-4 right now. Aside from those 3 losses, their only other loss was to start the conference play season off against Southern. Southern went on the road and got that victory against them, which should be a good one today and on Monday with Prairie View and Texas Southern, all right? Right above FAMU, Texas Southern, and Alcorn, Bethune-Cookman. I'm telling you about that Reggie Theus team. Southern was lucky to get out of that one the way that they did, but that team is really good. They're sitting there tied in second place with Jackson State at 8-3, who Southern got the victory in overtime against Jackson State already. So Southern has already beaten Jackson State, Bethune-Cookman. They 40-piece Florida A&M. They got a victory over Texas Southern. Alcorn, it was just Alabama State in the way. They got in a victory over Grambling, Alabama A&M, Prairie View, Mississippi Valley, and UAPB. Guess what? We're on the back end of the schedule now. Things begin to flip. That's why we're back around with Prairie View today and Texas Southern on Monday. And, of course, the team sitting at the top spot is Southern University, 10-1 in conference play. The Jaguars so far have done their thing. Aside from Alabama State, they would have finished that first half of conference play 11-0. But that's why you cannot take no opponent lightly in this conference. Southern, 8-0 on the season at home, 7-9 on the road. You're looking at today's opponent in Prairie View. Prairie View on the road thus far on the season is 2-15 on the road. And then on the other side for Texas Southern, who's going to be Monday's opponent, they're 3-10 on the road. So You're looking at other games around the SWAC today. You're going to have, let me make sure I got this right. Here we go. Going to have games around the SWAC. Southern, of course, Prairie View tip-off at 5 o'clock. Texas Southern versus Grambling at 4:30. Alcorn State against Bethune-Cookman at 4:30. Jackson State and Florida A&M at 5 o'clock. Alabama State and the Golden Lions of Pine Bluff tip-off at 5:30. And Alabama A&M in Mississippi Valley at 6 o'clock tip-off today. We got a call on the line? All right, let's go to the call lines. Chuck, got about 2 minutes with you. What's going on?
Oh, good morning, Perry. This is Chuck Hunt calling. I'm gonna be quick. One thing I noticed that happened in SWAC had an upset there. Thinking about Florida A&M beating Texas Southern in Houston, and Patrick Crary, first season coach. He gave him a 1-year contract. And I think the board of trustees at FAMU realized, hey, look, we better extend here. And look, you just beat a school that has a success in basketball. Texas Southern, that's a team that's tough to beat. And looking at him coming in, and he realizes that he has what he's having to do to try to get a team together, and he doesn't, not having that much time and putting it together. And like the players seem to be buying into his system, but this is where it's going now in college sports. You have to talk about managing rosters and having to, and because we're in the age of, they say, transfer portal and NIL, and this is even on the Power 5 level. Hubert Davis realizing that with North Carolina that things are not working out. Hey, look, we say I need a general manager and a video coordinator, and and they say, what is your problem? You're the University of North Carolina, but there's just a changing college landscape, and I'm just going to land on that one.
Hey, definitely is. Thank you, Chuck, as always, for the call in. And anybody else want to call in this morning as we get ready to take a break and come back on the other side, the call line 225-499-1073 if you want to call in, 225-499-1073 if you're feeling any type of way about the basketball, baseball, about the band. Did you watch the Southern University Marching Band in the pregame show of the Super Bowl, the big stage, the Jennifer Hudson show, the nightcap, just whatever? Southern has been on the road. Southern baseball getting the first victory of the season yesterday, starting the season 1-0 against Texas Southern in the Cactus Jack HBCU Classic. Then we're going to roll on with basketball, men and women today. Southern women getting a victory over Texas Southern on Thursday, taking on Prairie View today. And Southern men going to try to bounce back from their first conference loss against Alabama State on last Monday, taking on Prairie View today.